Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. It's obviously a busy time for all of us, so thank you for taking the time to join. Thank you to all of the people who submitted questions. I think we'll have a much more whole and fruitful discussion and interesting because it's not going to be what I would have thought of to talk about. It's going to be what you thought of to talk about, which is definitely better. Um, Before we really get started, I just want to note that the shir tonight is sponsored by Janet Rottenberg, Mindy and Shmuel Tolchinsky and family, Simi and Sammy Franklin family, and Jerry Rottenberg to commemorate the 14th yahrzeit of Melvin Rottenberg, Menachem Mendel, Ben Tzvi Yehuda Zichrono Livracha, beloved husband, father, and grandfather on the 9th of Nisan, which is next week. We thank the extended Rottenberg family very much for including us in remembering. He was all those relations that you just mentioned, but he also was very much a pivotal lay leader in the broader Greater Washington community, and certainly in this shul. Um, if you don't mind my saying so, Simi, I saw you before. If you don't mind my saying so, as people probably realize, I'm speaking with you from my office, and as anyone who knows me knows, right before I got started, I went and got a coffee from the general office area, and as I was waiting for my coffee, I was standing by Simi's desk, and I just glanced for a moment at this beautiful picture, which I see many times when I come to get my coffees, of Mr. Rottenberg and Rabbi Einemer. And this was, I don't think it was long before Rabbi Einemer passed away, and it wasn't that long before Mr. Rottenberg passed away. But it was a picture from our sanctuary in the building that he saw to it would come into existence for our shul. And I was just thinking for a moment. I knew what the sponsorship was tonight, but I was just thinking for a moment how I've said this before, but how people rightfully so speak of many wonderful accomplishments Rabbi Einemer had in our community in all kinds of ways, um, and that's all true. He had some very special partners, and Melvin Rottenberg was one of his real cadre of very special partners, and I think it's fair to say that everything we are able to accomplish, continue to accomplish as a shul, and it's in the broader community as well, but certainly our shul, he should have a chalik in all of it, and we very much still benefit from the tremendous presence of his family in our community in ways out in the open and in ways behind the scenes. So thank you very much to the extended Rottenberg family, certainly to Mrs. Rottenberg, and it should be a schus for his neshama. Thank you very much. Before we get started with the questions, I just want to highlight for everybody, rightfully so, this is a gathering about halachos of how we do this and how we do that, and it's really very important. But I want to make sure that there are three specific aspects of what it is to be a Jew in a community coming into Pesach that I really just want to highlight to make sure it's on everybody's radar. Um, we all know that things are more expensive now. We all know that just even going to the grocery store is significantly more expensive than it was a few years ago. And we all know that when Pesach comes, it's certainly more expensive. Um, and we know that these are times, particularly people in our community in the greater Washington area, have even greater stress about their finances because there's a significant percentage of people who, to be very blunt, aren't exactly sure how long they're going to have the jobs that they're currently holding. And so, for all these reasons, it's always an important thing to contribute to Mauschitin, uh, to the help the people in financial need meet their needs for Pesach. But really, this year is very significant to really make an effort. There's all kinds of addresses one can give to Moschitin. You can go online and give to my Moschitin collection. Yad Yehuda is distributing a tremendous amount of money in the greater Washington community, including people in our shul community. For Moschitin, certainly the Franco Foundation. Um, but I would really urge everyone to make an effort to participate in that in some way. One statement. Second statement. Um, there are many, many, many single people in our community and single parents who are going to be here for Pesach, and they don't have they're not going to family, and they don't have family coming to them, and to really be looking out for people and really think about who you can invite, who you can reach out to. It could be for a Seder, it could be for a meal. If there's nobody you can think of, or you want to expand your horizons, there was an email that came out the other day from the shul. Write an email to hospitality@yisc.org. You'd love to be on a list of people who will host, people who are looking for hosting. That's the second thing. And finally, there's a lot of chesed. That was a chesed in our table, but there's actually a lot of chesed going on right now in other people's tables. And what I mean by that is there are a few different needs right now in our shul community for people who are having difficulty maybe getting over something medical, having difficulty making meals for themselves. And Miriam Friedman and Melanie Carlin have piloted this program for years, helping hands within our show community. Right now, there are, I think, three, if I'm not getting it wrong, three different needs that people are making meals for and things like that. But we could have many more volunteers than we have. So I'd really, really urge you. There have been various emails that have gone out about that. If you want to find out more, if you want to volunteer, there's all kinds of ways to volunteer for that, and it's very important. Please contact Miriam Friedman. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And speaking of Miriam Friedman, we thank her for her efforts in organizing this and certainly organizing and being a great clearinghouse for all kinds of shilas that came in from people. Okay, thank you for not signing off. Okay, here we go. We're going to get started with the questions. It's a long, long list of questions. What I tried to do is I put all the questions having anything to do with Shabbos being on Erev Pesach at the front of the line, because I think that's the thing that we could all use the most brushing up on. Questions that would really kind of come up every year are God willing, we'll address them, but they're more near the end. There are some more, I think, general Pesach questions. If there's time, I'll take them. There's one particular person who submitted a number of these questions. If there's not time for me to take them, please feel free to reach out to me over the coming days, and I'll be very, very happy to answer your questions offline. Okay, now the way we do it is I don't take comments as we go. Feel free to write things in the chat if you have questions or comments as we go. And then once I've gotten through the whole list, then I'll go through the chat. And then if you don't feel comfortable writing things in the chat, and then at that point, we'll just ask people to call out comments, questions. Okay. Question number one. On Shabbos day, just to be clear, we're talking about Shabbos of Erev Pesach, not this coming Shabbos, but next Shabbos. So how does it work? Do we have both the morning meal and shalosh with bread? And by what time do we need to finish with the chametz? Okay, this whole meal plan for next Shabbos is like most of our sort of nightmare. Not so bad, but it's a little stressful. We'll figure it out together. But for people who love like different puzzles, this is like a Jewish dream if you like conceptual puzzles. So here we go. I'm going to tell you one time that we're going to talk about a lot tonight. 10:30 in the morning is the deadline for eating chametz next Shabbos morning. We're not allowed to be eating chametz past 10:30 in the morning. Statement number one. Now we know, I want to say something else. If you're Ashkenazi, it's also the deadline for eating egg matzah. I want to be very clear about that. We're going to talk about egg matzah a certain amount tonight. That 10:30 is the deadline for an Ashkenazi. It's the deadline for egg matzah, just like it's the deadline for chametz. Okay, that's statement number one. Statement number two, we normally make hamotzi at Shabbos meals. Certainly Friday night and Shabbos lunch, and the vast majority of the time, if we can, shalosh. That's statement number two. Statement number 3, we're not allowed to eat matzah the day of Erev Pesach because that's a separate, that's not the thing about a month before. That's a real halacha. That's a very set halacha. Because the rabbis wanted that when we come into the Seder, we come into it with a fresh taste. So how in the world do we even work out Shabbos lunch with hamotzi at Shabbos lunch next Shabbos? So the answer is, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is there won't be a drasha Shabbos morning. That's the good news. The bad news is people who go to Minyan Shabbos morning are going to need to catch a pretty early Minyan. So, for example, the latest Shabbos morning Minyan we're offering at Young Israel Shomrai Emunah is the Ashkama Minyan, 7 o'clock in the morning. Because if you think a person needs to make hamotzi by 10:30, there's no time any other way. We want to give people time to walk home like a mensch, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, so step number 1 is you daven early. Okay, now you do not have to be finished with the meal by 10:30. You have to be finished eating hamotzi by 10:30. So if I wash at 10:15 and I make hamotzi, be it on chametz, be it on egg matzah, and I'm done by 10:25, I can then proceed with a very, it's going to have to be a Pesach meal, but I can proceed with a very nice meal. I just can't have any more chametz or egg matzah after 10:30. Okay. Now, what happens with Shalosh Shudas? How does that work for Shalosh Shudas? So this is a really interesting dilemma. Okay. If you were giving the rules of Shalosh Shudas, so one standard rule of Shalosh Shudas is you're supposed to have it in the afternoon. Okay. Another standard rule of Shalosh Shudas is you're supposed to wash. For us Ashkenazim, there's no way to accomplish both of those principles. It's impossible. I can't wash on anything at 1 o'clock Shabbos afternoon. I have no options. So something's going to give somewhere. And basically, there are 2 approaches, and either one of these approaches are reasonable. Okay? One approach is make hamotzi for Shalosh Shudas, but eat it in the morning. And eat it before 10:30, by the way. So don't bend on the washing for Shalosh Shudas, but do bend on the normal time parameters for Shalosh Shudas. That's one approach. Now, I want to talk about that approach. What that means is I really have to get my game together Shabbos morning. That's what that means, is if I go to shul, so I go to shul, by the way, I will mention that there was an email, I think it went out today, that Jacob Frankel is canvassing to see if there's an interest in earlier minyan, in a Vasikin minyan Shabbos morning. So if that's of interest to you, look at the email and let Jacob know. Mrs. Ruchelman signed up. I see it in your eyes. Okay. So in any event, so basically it will be that you daven, you make kiddush, you make hamotzi, and you bench. And then you create some kind of buffer between benching and the next washing. In an ideal world, you would wait a half hour before you washed again. But most people are not so strict about that in this case. So what they do is they go for a walk around the block. Like they leave the house and they come back in. We'll go for a walk for 5-10 minutes and then come back in. So wash, bench, go for a walk for 5 or 10 minutes, come back, wash again. As long as you're doing it and you're finished eating chametz or egg matzah before 10:30 in the morning, then fine. And then you can have a long meal, as long as you're not eating any of those bread items after 10:30. That's one approach, but there is another approach. And for whatever it's worth, the second approach is what we normally do in my home. And if people ask the first approach is perfectly fine. I just think the first approach is extremely stressful. What we do is the second approach. What we do the second approach is we're particular about the timing for Shal Shudas, that normally you're supposed to have Shal Shudas sometime in the afternoon, but we're not as particular about making hamotzi for Shal Shudas. As some of you might know, in general, there's a discussion with Shal Shudas. Is a person obligated to have hamotzi for Shal Shudas? There's different opinions about it. So we normally say ideally we should have hamotzi, but if hamotzi wasn't an option, we'd have mazonos. If mazonos wasn't an option, you could have a piece of fish or chicken or something like that. So that's what we do. We just make it our business to wash for the Shabbos lunch meal, the first daytime meal, to be finished with whatever hamotzi we have before 10:30. Then we have a normal meal after that. As the meal extends, we bench, we do whatever we do, and then later in the day we just have a shal shudas non-hamotzi. Okay. Now, what are my options if not hamotzi? So that's an interesting question in its own right. So I'll tell you that the standard approach, I mentioned before that you're not supposed to have matzah on Erev Pesach. I'm not talking about egg matzah. I'm talking about regular matzah. You're not supposed to have matzah at all on Erev Pesach. The standard approach in halacha is you're also not supposed to have baked matzah meal items on Erev Pesach. So in other words, a matzah meal-based cake normally also wouldn't have an Erev Pesach. But interestingly, you may have cooked matzah meal-based things on Erev Pesach. What is the classic example of a cooked matzah meal-based thing? A matzah ball. So you're actually allowed to have a matzah ball Shabbos Erev Pesach afternoon. And you could certainly fulfill Shal Shudas with that. One option. Or, like we said before, you could have a piece of gefilte fish. The main thing is that you're sitting down and saying, you know what, this is my Shal Shudas. Piece of gefilte fish, piece of fruit. Okay. I should mention that as a general halachas, people are probably aware, in general, we're sensitive about eating too much on Erev Pesach. We want people to come in to the Seder with an appetite. So the general halacha, the way it plays out, would be that a person should begin this Shal Shudas before 4:25 Shabbos afternoon. Person should begin the Shal Shudas before 4:25 Shabbos afternoon. Okay, so I hope that was clear. Okay, next question. Really important question. What am I supposed to do with whatever chametz I don't eat Shabbos morning? So fine, I won't eat chametz after 10:30. So, okay. So let me just first clarify something for a moment. Egg matzah, the standard practice for Ashkenazim is we don't eat egg matzah over Pesach. If a person is ill, there are leniencies that they could eat egg matzah. But thank God, a healthy, well person does not eat egg matzah on Pesach. Even if it says egg matzah, even if it says kosher for Pesach, it means that it's not chametz. But an Ashkenazi, a healthy Ashkenazi wouldn't be eating egg matzah on Pesach. But we are allowed to have egg matzah in our homes on Pesach. So if what you decide to do for hamotzi is egg matzah, you don't have to worry about this question. Because you presumably, whatever chametz you've either destroyed on Friday morning, or you've put it away to be sold. Now, I just want everyone to understand, if you're selling chametz through me, the sale is happening on Friday, and you should have it put away by 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. So if you're eating egg matzah, whatever chametz is still in the house, presumably you put away to be sold by 5 o'clock Friday afternoon, so you don't have to worry about this. If you're going to eat chametz on that Shabbos, which I'll tell you, if it's not something that you're worried about with little kids or something, some people even without the little kids, it's just exceedingly stressful for them. If it's not something that you're worried about, it would probably be better to use the chametz. But I'll just say if it's something that either you're worried about the logistics with the little kids running all over the house, or it's just very stressful for you, egg matzah is fine. But if you have chametz, so fine, I stopped eating it by 10:30. Now what? What do I do with the other chametz? How does how does that work? So a few things. So the first thing is that chametz, I really should be thought out. I really should be thought out when I'm planning my food for that Shabbos. Okay? This is not the week to provide bread for an army. It really is not. So figure out, let's say you're gonna have, you're gonna get rolls or something. Probably you don't want challah. Challah, you're cutting it crumbs all over, but whatever. But maybe, who knows? But figure out your needs. Figure out if you're going to do rolls. Okay, let's say every person is going to get a roll for each meal. How many people are eating with us on Shabbos? And that's it. Assuming that you're able to figure it out well. So then it should really only be the crumbs left from your consumption of chametz. If that's making sense. By the way, just as an aside, if you decide to have chametz, you probably don't want to be having chametz at the dining room table. You probably don't want to be doing that. So probably what most of us will do is we'll probably have a motzi in another room in the house. Maybe we'll just go to the living room couch or something and just eat on the couch, and everyone to carefully eat, over, or maybe there's a table outside or something, whatever, however, exactly, whatever makes the most sense, whatever is the least stressful for you. And, you'll eat over like a plastic tablecloth or something, or everyone will eat over a plate, like a disposable plate, and then you'll just gather up the crumbs. Those crumbs, you could just flush down the toilet Shabbos morning. After the meal Friday night, or after you make hamotzi Friday night, you could just flush them down Friday night. And those crumbs, you can just flush down Shabbos morning. Okay? And by the way, if you, let's say, I don't know, let's say there's not, 3 loaves of bread, but it's a little small, like a little half a roll or something. You could kind of break it down. There's no problem. There's no problem in just breaking it down into small pieces, over the toilet or something, and just flushing it down the toilet. Now, if a person totally miscalculated and they've got all this, or they just got confused and they have all this bread, all this challah, what are they supposed to do? So what would seem to make sense, if not flushing it down the toilet, is find a non-Jew and just tell them, I'm giving this to you as a gift. Not that you're keeping it in your house. If you have, some of us still have non-Jewish neighbors. It's one of the luxuries of living on Clover Hill Drive. I still have non-Jewish neighbors. I don't know how many of you have non-Jewish neighbors, but if it were to happen, just go to a non-Jew and just, we have this holiday. I have to be rid of all my bread. This is a perfectly fine, half a loaf. Do you mind just giving it to me? Can I just give it to you as a gift? It's yours. Do with it whatever you like. And they take it away. That would be the approach. But again, obviously, it's a complicated thing, and far and away the best thing is to just sort of be planned out ahead of time, and to really just be having crumbs left over from the chametz, and just flush those crumbs down the toilet. Now, what's the deadline for being rid of that? So the deadline for being rid of that is 11:49 Shabbos morning. So I have to be finished by 10:30, and I have to be done with even owning my chametz, with even being in possession of my chametz by 11:49 Shabbos morning. By the way, you don't have to be waiting until 11:49. Like if I'm finished with my chametz, so whatever I'm done, as long as it's before 11:49, I should just proceed to the toilet and just flush it down the toilet. Um, Now, I do want to clarify There's something in this that's relevant, even if you're only having egg matzah. Because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, we normally say the bittul, the kol chamira, we normally say kol chamira twice. We say kol chamira after we check for the house for chametz. But actually what we're saying when we check the house for chametz, when we say kol chamira, is we're saying, maybe I missed something. If I missed any chametz that I missed, it should be considered like nothing. But when we burn the chametz, Erev Pesach morning, we say a more expansive kol chamira, because we're saying at this point, I'm done with my chametz. So I did miss it. I didn't miss it. Maybe it's in the back of my car. It's all nothing as far as I'm concerned. We're going to say the first bittul Thursday night when we check for chametz. But we're not going to say the second bittul Friday morning when we burn the chametz. And the reason we're not going to say the second bittul Friday morning is because I'm not ready to say that I don't want to have anything to do with chametz anymore. I'm washing on rolls this Shabbos. I can't say I don't want to have anything to do with any chametz anymore. So when do I say that more expansive bittul? So I say that more expansive bittul Shabbos morning. I'm supposed to say it sometime before 11:49, but only once I'm sure I'm really done with chametz. Okay. This is a great question, and I must confess, I wouldn't have thought of addressing it. I love the question. What if you don't eat the ksais bread in time? You know, person stayed up half the night worrying that they weren't going to eat the bread in time, and then they fell asleep and they overslept. And it's 10:45, and it is what it is. They missed it. So they missed it. I'll tell you what I tell a lot of you in a lot of contexts. That's the worst thing they said to me after 120 years. I wouldn't feel as bad as I will. Um, um, you missed it. It happens. So it's certainly more important to not be eating chametz after 10:30 than to say hamotzi on Shabbos. If that makes sense to everybody. Okay. 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 I believe we answered all those questions. We answered that. Oh, this was also a really interesting question. So I said it a moment ago, but for the purpose of this question, I just want to review it. And by the way, I just want to note, I know I'm throwing a lot of new information at a lot of you. There was something that went out from the shul. Um, if someone doesn't mind putting it up on the chat, there was something we called it the Pesach packet that I sent out. The cover page of it was just like a general letter for me explaining the packet, but the second page is, I think, a very helpful document. I hope so. Which is, I think it's the second and third page. I think it's a double-sided, which is just a timeline starting from Thursday morning. Thank you so much, Menashe. It was shared in the chat box. Just a timeline of all the unique things we're going to do because Shabbos is Erev Pesach is Shabbos. So if you haven't seen that, it might be helpful for you. Okay, so Thursday night we do the B'dika. After the B'dika, we do the Kol Chamira that we normally do after the B'dika. Friday morning, we burn the chametz. We don't say anything when we burn the chametz. We don't say a Kol Chamira when we burn the chametz. Shabbos morning, sometime before 11:49, after we've already flushed down chametz, but even if we didn't flush down chametz, either way, we're supposed to say sometime Shabbos morning, the Kol Chamira, the more expansive Kol Chamira. What happens if we forget to say that Kol Chamira Shabbos morning? It's even less of a concern than forgetting to make hamotzi. In other words, it's a good question. It doesn't render anything else invalid. It's really sort of a catch-all kind of thing that we're doing. We physically destroyed chametz. We said the bittul the best we could. What if it's after 11:49? We no longer can say the kol chamira. So we missed it. We tried and we missed it, but it doesn't render anything else invalid as long as we destroyed chametz, as long as we said a kol chamira, etc. Thank you for raising that question. Okay. Person asked, what is the proper text for Kiddush on Saturday night? I think what the person means is sort of more a broad question. I apologize. Um, I had in mind I was going to have a sitter at the ready. Um, I just don't want to confuse, but give me one moment. I'm sorry for forgetting. One of the good parts of working in a shul is if you ever need a sitter, there's always one around. It's a good thing. Okay, so um, give me one moment, please. Okay, so Kiddush Saturday night is as follows. You start off Saturday night, of course, the first Seder. So some of us probably are in the habit of everyone saying the words of Kiddush together for the first cup of the Seder. Some of us probably have it that one person says the Kiddush on everyone's behalf and everyone has a cup in front of them. People probably do different things. The first part of Kiddush is we make a boy priyagofen. Okay. Then we do the standard part of Kiddush for Yom Tiv that we're used to doing when we have Kiddush for Yom Tiv. And then we make a bracha on the candle. So everything I've set up until now is regular Yom Tov night Kiddush. But then before the Shechianu, there's a Shechianu Saturday night. Before the Shechianu, we make a bracha on the candle. Now there are different opinions how to do the candle. The special thing about a Havdalah candle is that it's more at least two wicks coming together, and there's a shared flame from the two wicks. So most of us have the practice of doing the bracha on the candle that way on a Yom Tov night, that's Saturday night also, which would mean, practically speaking, probably our Yom Tov candles are probably more or less in vision with our Seder table. Probably for most of us, that's the case. And so what you would do is you have candles. You take one candle. For most of us, it's probably a candle that hasn't yet been lit. Just not one of your formal Yom Tov candles, just a candle. One candle. And if this is my Yom Tov candle in a regular, candlestick, this other candle I hold together I meet the wick of my second candle meets the flame of my Yom Tov candle. And for just a moment, as the people assembled make the bracha of Borei Morei Ha'esh, and raise their fingers like you would on a regular Saturday night, one representative of the family goes and puts those two candles together. Okay? Then, after the bracha of Borei Morei Ha'esh, there's a Havdalah bracha that becomes part of Kiddush. And then we make Shechianu, and then we get going with the Seder. Now, what I just described it, but in any standard Haggadah, I'm sure there's an insert in the Kiddush, about a paragraph long insert in the Kiddush for Saturday night. And that's what I just described. I hope that made sense to everybody. Okay, next question. We're doing pretty well in terms of getting through the questions. Next question. It is appropriate to make, and it's a little bit hard in Seder preparations this year because we're used to doing all this stuff day of. Like if Pesach was on a Tuesday night, if the Seder was on Tuesday night, so we'd be getting ready for the Seder on Tuesday. But there's stuff that you're not allowed to, first of all, you're not allowed to prepare on Shabbos for after Shabbos, we know that. But in terms of food preparation, really, we should be preparing all kinds of food things on Friday to be ready to bring into action when it's time, Saturday night. Salt water. So salt water really, it's actually in halach, it's far better to not be making salt water on Yom Tiv. So someone asked a very, very prescient question. What happens if someone forgot to make salt water before Shabbos? I'm sure it's going to happen. Might happen in my house. I don't know. So you are allowed to make salt water Saturday night. You're not supposed to make a lot of salt water, but a cup of salt water is fine. Okay. Um, what about if you realized you forgot to make the charoses? You know, things happen. What happens? A person realized they forgot to make the charoses. So the bottom line is the fruit for the charoses um may be graded on Yom Tiv. Again, you have to wait until it's Saturday night, but you may be graded on Yom Tiv. Um, if a person's going to crush nuts, they're supposed to do it in some type of abnormal manner. So maybe taking the nuts in a bag or something and crushing them while in the bag. Okay, travel plans. All kinds of questions came up about travel plans. Okay, a person is leaving Thursday morning. When do they do B'dikas Chametz? Person who's leaving Thursday morning should do B'dikas Chametz the last night that they're home. So that's Wednesday night. Wednesday night, a person will do B'dikas Chametz. When they do B'dikas Chametz on Wednesday night, they do not make a bracha on it. They do not make a bracha, but they do say Kol Chamira. When does one dispose of the chametz? When does one dispose of the chametz? To that, there are two answers. Well, actually, well, if a person wanted to, they could take the chametz with them on the trip. Probably not so advisable. It would be perfectly fine to burn the chametz Thursday morning before you left. Truth be told, it would even be fine to burn the chametz Wednesday night, to be very honest with you. If a person has no access to burn chametz, this is a good thing to realize in general. It is preferred to burn the chametz, but if a person does not have access to burning chametz, uh, as should be clear from our discussion, it's okay to flush it down the toilet. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to read the question here. We're not going to be home for Pesach, but a couple will be staying in our home. They are using it only for sleeping and could go from the entry door right up the stairs to their room and the bathroom. Those areas will be cleared of anything, even potentially chametz. They will not be touching or even walking through our kitchen. I was not planning on moving or covering chametz appliances or counters in the kitchen. Is that okay? Okay, so this is a really important question. I really appreciate the question. I actually, if anyone listens on the voice notes of inspiration, my halacha thing from tonight is related to that topic. Not exactly this, but it's related to it. When we sell chametz, what we're saying is I'm selling the chametz and I'm selling the chametz to the non-Jew, and I'm renting the location of the chametz to the non-Jew. So I sometimes have some chametz that I've kept in my cabinet here in my office. So if I want to sell chametz, it's not the shul's chametz, it's my chametz. If I want to sell chametz, I should note on the list for the sale of chametz that I have chametz in my office at such an address. Um, what I'm really saying is not, and I put a little piece of tape on the cabinet to mark it that's hands off. What I'm really saying is not only that I'm selling the non-Jew my chametz, what I'm actually also telling him is if he wants to use that cabinet, he's welcome to. He doesn't own the cabinet, but I'm renting use of the cabinet to him over Pesach. If there's a bedroom that I don't want to have to worry about and no one's going to be staying there anyway, and I said, well, I'll just sell the chametz in there. I don't want to clean it for Pesach. That's fine. But then what I'm saying is use of that bedroom is rented to the non-Jew, which means I shouldn't be using that bedroom. Now, that means that if I'm going away for Pesach so I'm not going to worry about stuff, I'm just going to sell, that's okay. But then I can't have neighbors use the house if I haven't cleaned anything in the house for Pesach for two reasons. One reason is I'm setting up these guests to have chametz all over the place. That's not appropriate. without any markings, without any. And the other is, if I just sold all the chametz in the house, I'm telling the non-Jew that he has usage rights over Pesach. So I'm double dipping. That's not okay. So does that mean the way this person presented it is very helpful. It's fine for me to say, sure, your guests can stay in my house. Here's what I'm doing. I'm not dealing with the kitchen. I'm not dealing with the dining room. I'm not dealing with the playroom. I'm not dealing with the living room. The chametz in all those areas and the use of all those rooms is being rented to the non-Jew. But I am going to make sure there's no chametz in the bedroom that I'm giving you. I am going to make sure, I don't think the bathroom is much of an issue. I am going to make sure there's no chametz in the hallway. I am going to make sure there's no chametz in the foyer when you first walk in. And so A, it's a fine place for an observant Jew to be over Pesach. But B, it's not the non-Jew's usage. That's the kitchen, not the bedroom. The bedroom I cleaned. I checked. Now, in terms of the kitchen, I should mark off in some way that there's chametz in the kitchen and it's off limits. So if I don't want to deal with the kitchen at all, I should put some tape or sign or something by the entry of the kitchen that people should know that this is off limits. If I say to myself, I don't have chametz in the kitchen, I have chametz in the refrigerator. I have chametz in the cabinets. So that's fine. So the kitchen doesn't have to be off limits. I could just put a piece of tape on the refrigerator. I could just, put tape along the cabinets. I hope that made sense. Okay, we're really almost done with this segment. There are many more toothpaste and mouthwash that are acceptable than what I'm about to say, but the question was submitted, so I'll give you one of each. Okay, so question is just in general, what toothpaste will be okay for Pesach? So at least one list that I saw said that all kinds of Colgate toothpaste is okay for Pesach. So that's just again, if somebody wants to ask about specific things, you're more than welcome to contact me offline. I have different lists and things like that. Mouthwash, all scope is okay for Pesach. So without getting into specific titles or this or that, all Colgate is okay for Pesach for toothpaste. All scope is okay for Pesach for mouthwash. And this is a question that's near and dear to my heart. Except for brand of instant coffee for Pesach, that's important. Folgers. Excuse me. Folgers Classic Roast, decaf or regular, all those variations of Folgers instant coffee are okay for Pesach, even without kosher for Pesach markings. This is not all the things on the list, but this I thought was just the best way to just. Okay. Is one allowed to go into a regular grocery store, not Shalom's, not Kosher Mart? Is one allowed to go into Giant on Pesach and buy cut fruit? That's a very fair question, a very reasonable question. It's a little bit of an assessment of what the story is, what's the norm. I personally would be very skeptical that a knife used to cut chametz first of all, I think it's very possible that the cut fruit that's being sold in Giant or Costco, or wherever, wasn't even cut in that place. I think at least sometimes it was cut somewhere else and just shipped. Even if it was cut, in whatever store, I think it's pretty likely that there was no chametz around when they're cutting watermelon. I mean, in terms of like bread or, if a person wanted to be strict about it, I don't think they're crazy. We're definitely conscientious more than the rest of the year about chametz on Pesach. But if you push me into a corner and you said, the only way I can get pineapple, is, and obviously we're talking about no additives, no flavoring, just fresh pineapple. The only way I can get pineapple, the only way is if I walk into Safeway and get everything. So I personally, if you asked me us or mutter, I would say mutter. But again, if somebody wanted to be, more strict about it, I don't think they're crazy. This was an interesting question. What do vegetarians and vegans do for the Seder plate? And what I would tell you is that the meat items on the Seder plate are not as much about what I feel like eating or don't feel like eating. In fact, the normal thing on the Seder plate we wouldn't even eat at the Seder. It's really representing korbanos. So if a person is a vegetarian, that of course is fine, but it would still be appropriate to have those items on the Seder plate because that's something that we look forward to when the Beis Hamikdash is built speedily in our days. Okay, there are some more broad questions. What I'm going to do, though, is I am now going to go to the chat box. If there's time at the end, I'll be happy to talk about the broad questions, but I'm not sure I'm going to get there. And again, the person who submitted them is welcome to contact me, uh, tomorrow, next week, whatever is convenient for you. Okay, we're going to go to the chat. Um, again, I'm sometimes I don't know if questions were asked before or after I mentioned certain things, so I'll apologize ahead of time if I'm repeating things. But just to clarify, I need to be finished eating hamotzi by 10:30 Shabbos morning. I do not need to be benching at that point in time. I just need to be finished eating hamotzi, and then I could just proceed normally with my meal. And I can bench, who knows when. Thank you. Standard practice for Sephardim. Again, you need to make sure it's kosher Pesach. But to the best of my knowledge, again, Sephardim, there's different practices, but you can check it out. But to the best of my knowledge, Sephardim are okay with eating egg matzah on Pesach, even if they're healthy. You might want to just double check with someone who pronounces words differently than I do. But that I think that's pretty widely held. Okay. Great question. Thank you, Joan. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for not clarifying that point. Okay. What we are saying when we sell chametz, not just for this year, for any year, what I am saying, by the way, just as an aside, I'm not buying chametz from you people. Okay? I might look a little slow, but I'm not that dumb. Why would I want your chametz, days before Pesach? I'm not buying your chametz. What I'm doing is I'm accepting responsibility and authorization to be your proxy to sell your chametz. Okay? So when I'm sitting at the chametz sale, what I and other rabbis are saying to the very kind non-Jewish purchaser is that these families, these individuals listed on all these papers that we're giving you, have chametz in their house that they are setting aside to be sold. There is chametz that you have that you don't want to be selling. And that chametz is not included in the sale. So actually what we're really saying is we stick our chametz in the sub basement. So by the way, just to reinforce what we said before, so any chametz in my sub basement, I'm selling to the non-Jew, and because I'm not putting it in a specific section of the sub basement, what I'm really saying is he has usage of the sub basement for Pesach if he feels like it. If he wants somewhere to stick all of the Wheaties he gets from all the different houses, he's welcome to use my sub basement. But what I'm also saying is if I have chametz in some kitchen cabinet that I plan on using for Shabbos, that's not included in the sale. I hope that made sense. Thank you for raising that. Yes, it's fine to have egg matzah Friday night too. There is no difference between Friday night and Shabbos morning in terms of egg matzah. Hmm. Hmm. Ariel, your second question, I'm embarrassed to say I'm not 100% sure offhand. I'm so sorry for not thinking about that ahead of time. Ariel's second question is, I had said you're not supposed to have baked matzah meal products, Erev Pesach. So Ariel's question is, what about Friday night? So I'm pretty sure that we wouldn't have baked matzah meal items Friday night either. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't. I'm about 95% sure. Okay, if you like Ariel, you can check back with me. But I'm pretty sure that we would not have baked matzah meal items Friday night either. Thank you for raising that. Okay, that is a great question. So Nancy asked, if I'm eating the chametz outside, if that's how I'm going to handle eating the chametz, can I just leave the crumbs for birds or insects to eat? Um, the basic answer is yes. I mean, I shouldn't like put like a loaf of bread down on my lawn. I mean, I shouldn't do that. But if it's just crumbs, we can assume that it'll be consumed by the, yeah, we can assume that it'll be consumed. It should, yeah. Um, but it shouldn't be, you're not supposed to be like spreading it out over your lawn. There's a Shabbos issue with that. But if I'm sitting, if I'm sitting on my front lawn and I'm eating all the bread and there just happen to be some crumbs that fall on the ground, that's okay. I don't have to start picking the crumbs up from the ground. Yeah, that was a great question. Thank you for raising that. Thank you, Fran. That's also a very important question. How much egg matzah does a person need to eat at the Shabbos meals? Um, that's a very like complicated discussion. Um, I would say a person should eat. I would say I think a person should eat one whole egg matzah at each Shabbos meal if they're making a motzi and egg matzah. It's a lot. It's a little complicated just making that motzi on the egg matzah, but that would be my recommendation. You can only do what you can do, but that would be my recommendation. Um, Thank you, Menashe. Right. If anybody is familiar with the Yak Nahaz acronym, which Menashe is referencing here, yeah, thank you. That in terms of the sequence of Kiddush. Yes, thank you for raising that, Menashe. I really appreciate that point. Um, I was talking about putting the candles together for the Saturday night Kiddush. You're not allowed to blow out the candle at the end. So what that means is if you're going to use a candle like that, you need to make sure there's some empty candlestick or holder or something that you can put the candle safely in without actively, letting it just burn down without actively blowing it out. Thank you so much, or shaking it out. Thank you so much for raising that, Menashe. Thank you. Hold on one second. So going back to Havdalah during Kiddush, do we use a new candle not lit with a Yom Tov candle that was previously lit, and then we just let the new candle burn out? Yeah, that's normally done. Now, by the way, if you if it was more convenient to just put two Yom Tov candles together, you could do that also. I think for many of us, it's not easy to, let's say, maneuver the candlestick or anything like that. But you could put two Yom Tov candles together. The point is supposed to put two candles together. I hope I answered that. Yeah, so I think we addressed that. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Shabbos morning, if everyone receives a challah roll and we don't want to cut it, how does that motzi work in regards to Lechem Mishnah? Good question. So I actually think if you don't want to start dealing with cutting it, I think what we should do is, you kind of operate in pairs. You know what I mean? So in other words, so if basically there's all these roles and let family member one and family member two, let family member two listen to family members one hamotzi, and then put the two rolls together. Family member one eats one, and he gives the other roll to family member two. And by the way, I know someone's going to ask it if you have an odd number of family members. So then what I would recommend is just putting three of them together. Just hold three rolls together and just give each person a roll. I think so. I think that makes sense. I hope that was clear. Thank you for raising. That's great. Thank you for raising that. Okay, very interesting question. Thank you, Ariel. If somebody was not going to use their kitchen sink for anything but cold water and not going to use the counters for cooking, may one just clean them very well and not formally kosher them? You're not going to do anything with heat. You know what I mean? In any way connected to the sink or the counters. The answer to your question is yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you for raising that, Bev. And thank you for listening to the earlier example in Shul. Um, okay, I get asked this question a lot. Person has a downstairs freezer. They want to keep some chametz in the downstairs freezer over Pesach. They're going to sell the chametz in the downstairs freezer to a non-Jew. That's fine. Thank God they're making a lot of food for Pesach. They need the downstairs freezer for Yom Tov. So and I just got finished giving you this whole spiel that it's not just that you're selling the chametz in the freezer to the non-Jew, you're renting the space of the freezer to the non-Jew. So are you allowed to use the freezer? So basically what I would say is what you should do is in your mind, and by the way, you definitely need to clearly delineate what area of the freezer has chametz that you're selling and what area of the freezer is for you to use, because you don't want confusion on Pesach, that's for sure. And that would be a halachic issue fundamentally. So basically, what you could do is you could put some kind of cover over the top two shelves, let's say. You could say, I'm selling the chametz on the top two shelves to the non-Jew. That's what I'm doing. And the rest of the freezer, I'm not selling. There's no chametz in there, and I'm selling the chametz on the top two shelves to non-Jew, and I'm renting the top two shelves to the non-Jew, but not the rest of the freezer. But there should be a clear demarcation of what's what. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I always have to look this up. Give me 1 second. Everyone just bear with me for one moment, please. I'm sorry. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Flour is not considered chametz gamur. Certainly we would put our flour away, but the questioner, I believe, is getting at there are people who have the practice of not selling like full-fledged chametz. So if a person had that practice, would it be all right to sell flour? Thank you for asking that. That's a neat question. Somebody asked me, let's say a person's using egg matzah for Shabbos. Okay? Person's using egg matzah for Shabbos. Um, can they just say the kol chamira when they burn the chametz Friday morning? Like they're done. They're done. They're not going to do anything more with chametz until after Pesach. I would still say they shouldn't say the full kol chamira until sometime Shabbos morning. Just because here's the thing. If you're walking home Friday night and someone says, you must try this, they're standing out on their lawn. You must try, this chametz stick, whatever. If you take a bite into it, you're being a total hypocrite from what you said when you said the kol chamira. So I would still encourage you to wait until Shabbos morning to say the kol chamira. Thank you for posing it. It's a good question. Richard, that's a really interesting question. Um, if a person has kashered their oven for Pesach, they could theoretically bake or cook a chametz stick item double wrapped in the oven. They would need to make sure that the outside of it was absolutely clean without any crumbs or anything. And they would need to make sure that there was nothing, that the double wrap was really well wrapped and no tears and anything. I don't think I have the blood pressure to try that, to be honest with you. But technically speaking, I would say that would be acceptable. It's an interesting question. So Sarah, I think in the earlier questions, I hope I already answered your question about the candles. If not, just re-ask it if I'm missing something. Oh, neat, 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 neat. Okay, Elisa's question is, um, let's say you're going to a different time zone. Um, so when we talk about you need to eat chametz by such a time, you need to burn chametz by such and such a time, you need to no longer have chametz by such and such a time. Like, is it based on where I am or where I live? So it's totally based on where you are. It's totally based on where you are. I do want to mention one thing, just so people aren't confused about something. Some of you who have already sold chametz with me might have either I asked you or you heard it in another conversation. I am doing a separate list of chametz sale for people going abroad. So why am I doing a separate list of chametz sale for people going abroad? The reason is as follows. Okay, I might be giving you more information you're looking for. We're actually doing the sale of chametz Friday morning. We're going to do the sale of chametz Friday morning. But we want to give people a little bit of breathing room. So we're going to say to the purchaser, we're going to do the transaction now, but it shouldn't actually take effect for another number of hours. So we're going to tell the person at like 11 o'clock in the morning, we're going to tell the person, we're doing all the transactions now to be effective at 5 o'clock this afternoon. It just gives people, it's a little bit less of a stress on people. Here's the thing. There are people who are selling their chametz through me who are going to be in Israel. 5 o'clock Friday afternoon in Silver Spring is already Shabbos in Israel. And I'm supposed to be representing these people in a sale. We don't do transactions on Shabbos. So for the people who are going to be in Israel or other places abroad that are significantly ahead of us time-wise, those people, we're going to have a separate list. And those people at 11 o'clock in the morning, their chametz is going to be sold at 11 o'clock in the morning. But for everybody else, the sale isn't going to take effect until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to stipulate as such. So that's the only thing that is. But normally the halacha is it's based on where you are, not where you come from. Hope that made sense. Oh, thank you, Fran. That's a really interesting question. What's the latest time chametz can be burned on Friday? So here's the story. It's very interesting. Am I allowed to own chametz on Friday afternoon? Sure, I'm allowed to own chametz on Friday afternoon. We're talking about making hamotzi on Shabbos morning. Of course I'm allowed to own chametz on Friday afternoon. The minhag, though, is that when I do the burning of the chametz, I should do it by the same time that I would be burning it if Friday was Erev Pesach. In other words, we don't want, if we took a survey right now of everybody on this Zoom, so much halacha that we know because of our memories of things that we've done or seen, or so we don't want to get people mixed up as to when the chametz is burnt. So we want to keep that muscle memory strong. So the minhag is we burn it by the same time Friday morning that you would be burning it if Friday was Taka Erev Pesach. And that would be like 11:49. Um, um, we have a very nice arrangement with KMS. KMS invites the broader community to come burn chametz at KMS Friday morning. Somebody should correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's between 9 and 11 Friday morning. Double check, but I'm pretty sure that's the time. Along those lines, I should note that we're going to have so KMS and Shomrai do this deal. So KMS's layout is a little more advantageous for burning than our layout is, but our layout, Baruch Hashem, is pretty good for a chametz dumpster. So just FYI for people, thank you to Josh Bryson for arranging. Mirz Hashem, as of a week from tomorrow, next Wednesday, there's going to be a dumpster in the shul driveway just for chametz, because of course garbage pickup is on Monday. So people will probably have a decent amount of chametz. This is a really important thing though. Please, 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 as of the last day of garbage pickup before Pesach, which will be Monday, please segregate your garbage to the best of your abilities. In other words, we'll have a lot of garbage for all kinds of reasons in our houses. Please try to keep like a chametz garbage bag or something, And so then it's not that much, it's not that much for you to schlep to shul. And B, even more importantly, we're not going to have enough dumpster space for everyone in Kent Mills garbage from Monday through Thursday night. It's not going to work. So, please keep that in mind. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Mrs. Malka. So it is how you define it. So you have a pantry that you tape off and say there's chametz in this pantry. So then it happens to be in the kitchen, but you're not renting the kitchen to the non-Jew. You're renting the space of the chametz. So you're saying the pantry, is the non-Jew's welcome to use the pantry if he wants. Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's a really interesting question, Richard. So let's think about this. Um, I do not think it's a good idea to eat a chametzik meal over Shabbos. I think it's a good idea to eat a Pesach meal over Shabbos, and then possibly, the hamotzi be chametz. If the hamotzi is chametz, then it's just a few crumbs, and my recommendation is to flush those crumbs down the toilet. I don't have a garbage recommendation for you for the chametz from the Shabbos meals. In other words, I would not advise that you be setting yourself up for having all this chametz to garbage. Now, what I will tell you, and maybe this is what you mean, Richard, what I will tell you is, let's say I'm not allowed to own a kazayas of chametz in any one place over Pesach. So if, if I have a paper plate and I eat a roll over a paper plate, so there's, I don't know, how many crumbs are there? Is there's a kazayas of crumbs on my plate? I don't, probably not. Let's say I take that plate and I walk over to the toilet and I brush off the crumbs into the toilet. Is there some speck of chametz still on the plate? Yes, yes, there's some speck of chametz still on the plate. Is there a problem with me throwing that plate in the garbage? No problem, because it's such a small amount, it's nothing. It's not a problem. Now, if I eat a whole meal and I have leftovers and I have this and I have that, then you know, then that could be a problem either for my toilet or for my having chametz in my possession over Shabbos, over Pesach. I hope that answered the question. Thank you for sharing that, Ariel. Very interesting. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Malka. Chametz gamor may be sold. Chametz gamor may be sold. There are people who are stringent, and it's a praiseworthy stringency. It basically is a response to the fact that, as we all know, the sale of chametz, though it's a wonderful way for me to see and schmooze with so many people in these days, I tell people, like, this is like the week and a half of the year that everyone's so happy to see me. A person comes into shul. I hope the rabbi's there because maybe he'll be available to sell chametz. Um, but it is a loophole. We know it's a loophole. So there are people. So it's fine. It's perfectly fine, and it's a very accepted approach in Klal Yisrael, and it's halachically sound. There are people who say, you know, and by the way, and the people who say what I'm about to say also sell chametz for Pesach. But chametz gamor, like real, like bread and cookies and this and pretzels, they say maybe it's better not to sell that. I see that as a stringency. I would tell you it's fine to sell chametz gamor. It's a stringency that some people have. Thank you for raising that. Interesting question. I agree with you, Richard. I think people from out of town should say their own Kol Chamira Shabbos morning. I think that makes sense. Let everyone say their own Kol Chamira. I agree. Okay. Thank you, Debbie. So you should say Kol Chamira Shabbos morning based on the time zone in which you're in. So if a visitor from California was here for Yom Tiv, for the 3-day Yom Tiv at the beginning of Yom Tiv, I would say, I don't care when the Zman is in California. They should say Kol Chamira sometime before 11:49 in the morning, for example. Hope that answered the question. Thank you, Elaine. That's a very fair question. If there's only one bread eater, what do I do with the second bread roll? That's a very fair question. I'll tell you what I would say. I would say, um, um, okay. I would say you have three options. One option is you can just kind of get small rolls. You know what I mean? You know, that's one option. Second option, and this, I hope nobody faints after I say what I'm about to say. You could theoretically take, well, could certainly take an egg matzah or even a regular matzah and like hold it up against the roll and just make sure, you brush off the matzah afterwards. But I don't know how many people in Klal Yisrael would be willing to do that. Um, and if all else failed, I would just say the person shouldn't worry about Lechem Mishnah that Shabbos, and they should just make on one. I think so. But the truth be told, if this one thing, if none of the other solutions are good, if it was me, I would just eat two rolls. You know? But if none of the other solutions are good, then probably egg matzah is probably the best solution, by the way, because then you don't have this pressure and you can keep your box of egg matzah around. That's a fair question. Thank you. Have more guests. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I've gotten through the chats now. I am happy. I imagine there are people who aren't necessarily comfortable chatting. If does anyone want to call out any questions now? Would anyone like to say them on Ishtana? Sorry.
What about garbage Monday pickup?
Okay. So thank you very much. So let me just explain the question. Thank you, Linda. Mrs. Price, you have to make sure to tell David Maslow that I got in a garbage discussion. Okay, so the issue is as follows. We normally say that garbage cans are normally considered, in terms of full of garbage and this and that, are normally considered muksa on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So the problem is garbage pickup in our neighborhood is Monday. And since garbage pickup is Monday, so normally on a Sunday night, you take out your cans. But what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do when Sunday night is Yom Tov? So my recommendation would be as follows. My recommendation would be to put the garbage and recycling out on the curb Friday afternoon. But let me explain what I mean. Let's say for a second, I'm just going to throw let's say a person has 4 bags of garbage. 4 bags of garbage, okay? And person has 4 bags of garbage. So they normally have 2 big cans and they put 4 bags of garbage in 2 big cans and sell. So I actually would recommend something else because thank God I think we're going to have some of you were laughing at me that I thought only 4 bags of garbage, but I think over a 3-day Yom Tov, thank God we'll have all kinds of garbage. So what I actually would recommend, if you have 4 bags of garbage on Friday afternoon, I would recommend you don't take out 2 garbage cans. I would recommend you take out 4 garbage cans and put 1 bag in each of 4 garbage cans. So now what you have is these 4 garbage cans already out on the curb. Then, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about anything chametz right now. I'm just talking about regular Shabbos, Yom Tov kind of stuff. Then we know that we can carry out a bag of garbage when it fills up. But instead of taking it to the can, like right outside your kitchen door, I would advise you to take it straight out to the curb and put it in one of the garbage cans. So like if you imagine that like each garbage can hold, I don't know, let's say like 3 or 4 bags, for example. If I have 4 garbage cans laid out, so then when garbage bag number 5 comes, I put it in can number 1. When garbage bag number 6 comes, I put it in can number 2. And Linda, am I making sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that. Okay, I think there were some new messages in the interim. Okay, that's a really important question, Sarah. Okay, here's the story. I apologize for not addressing it. I said to myself, I'm only going to talk about it if somebody asks. So Baruch Hashem, somebody asked. Okay, what is the story with placement? Where's Kiddush? Where's Motzi? Where's benching? Where's the meal? Let's say a person's eating with chametz on Friday night or Shabbos morning. How do the details work here? Okay, so I want to tell you a few halachos. Halacha number one, Kiddush is supposed to be made in the same place that Hamotzi is made. By the way, well, I don't want to. Kiddush is, we got enough problems. Kiddush is supposed to be made in the same place Hamotzi is made. Statement number one. Statement number two, if it's all in the same building, and I have in mind, when I make Kiddush in part A of the building, I have in mind that I'm going to be making a motzi in part B of the building, that's good enough. It's not necessarily that way once it goes outside. So I want to run two scenarios. Okay. Scenario number one, you decide you're gonna make hamotzi in the playroom. I'm just saying a room in the house. It doesn't nothing magical about that. Gonna make hamotzi in the playroom, the living room, whatever. So then that you tell everybody before Kiddush. That's the plan. So if that's what you're doing, you can make Kiddush at the dining room table. Okay. Everybody goes washes. You all make your hamotzi in the playroom or living room or whatever. You do it in a very careful way. You gather the crumbs, you flush them down the toilet. You probably kind of brush yourself off and things like that just to make sure. And then you sit at you go back to the dining room and you have your meal in the dining room. You made Kiddush at the dining room table, you ate at the dining room table. I would say you should bench in the living room because that's where you actually ate the hamotzi. Okay. Now, let me also say that if you have a porch, for these purposes, it's the equivalent of the living room. I mean an enclosed porch, but I would also say even like a carport or like an open porch or something like that, as long as it's sort of like somewhere in the edifice of the house, like part of the edifice of the house in some way, I would say it's all like doing it in the living room. Deck, thanks, Menashe. Deck, I would say that's like doing it in the living room. Now, if you don't want to deal with that, and you want to really, really go like on the lawn, then I would just say you should make Kiddush on the lawn as well. Make Kiddush on the lawn, make hamotzi on the lawn, go inside, eat your meal at the table, and then bench back on the lawn. Thanks, Menashe. Now, I just want to loop back. If this is like, if people are pulling their hair out as I'm speaking, I just want to loop back. The goal here is not to make people meshuggah. If this really stresses people out, just do egg matzah. Just do egg matzah. And if you do egg matzah, you could do everything at the dining room table. And it probably makes the most sense to eat disposable, you know, for the Shabbos meals. But if you're eating on your, if you're eating on your plates and just clean it off. It's fine. You don't have to do things in the toilet or anything like that. You just have to make sure that that there's not egg matzahs lying around on your table when you're eating at the Seder later. That's all. It shouldn't be that people are accidentally eating egg matzah over Pesach. Sarah, did I answer your question clearly? Please jump back in if it wasn't clear. And thank you to Bev for making sure the Erev is up. Very true. Thank you very much. And thank you, Menashe, for leaving on the lawn plug. Again, thank you, Elaine. Let people make their own decisions. Again, there's a way to do this inside. There's a way with chametz. There's a way to do this inside with egg matzah. And you know something? I want to tell you something else. Well, no, actually, you really do have to make a decision before Shabbos because you've got all that chametz you have to. So listen. But by the way, if a person wants to make a decision later, you can buy the chametz, you can buy the rolls, you can have a box of egg matzah, and bottom line is, you just have to make a decision before 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. If you decide you want to go with the egg matzah, just take the chametz and put it with the stuff you're selling. And if you decide you want to do the chametz, so you have a box of egg matzah around, just to make sure that people don't eat it by accident. That's all. I just want to see. Okay, great. I think so, Mindy. I think for these purposes, an attached patio without an overhang is considered part of the house. But I'm going to tell you right now, Mindy, I do not assume responsibility that your kids will accept that. But if you're asking me, that's what I would say. That's what I would say. Um, yes, absolutely fine. Thank you. I just want to read out loud what a person wrote privately to me. And to confirm, egg matzah on actual Pesach dishes is perfectly fine, just as long as cleaned before using after 10:30. 100%. Yeah, chametz on the patio. So again, Sarah, so chametz on the patio is not going to be a problem if you're talking about like crumbs. You know what I mean? You shouldn't like leave like half a loaf of bread on your patio, but crumbs. The assumption is that birds will come and this and that. It'll be fine. Let's see. Yes, so I think Joan, I think I did that. Thank you, Mindy. Okay. Um, I'm gonna come back, Steve. I'm gonna come back to you in a second. For Shabbos, egg matzah is okay for healthy people. Yes. Again, if the worries about the crumbs and the stresses about where and what, don't take a person for a loop. I would say chametz is better. But if either a person is worried about, logistically with kids or this or that, or a person just doesn't want to deal with the stress, egg matzah is fine. But just understand that a healthy Ashkenazi may not eat egg matzah after 10:30 Shabbos morning. Okay, Steve, how to eat cold food on Saturday night? Once it's late enough to end Shabbos, um, which is probably something in the ballpark of 8:20, something like that. Once it's late enough to end Shabbos, you're not allowed to turn on an oven. But if you have an oven on before Shabbos, or if you have a burner on before Shabbos, you can, once it's late enough to end Shabbos, you can warm food in that manner. It has to be that the appliance was already on before Shabbos, though. Okay, I'm sorry to say that, to the best of my knowledge, it seems the organizations are saying, if someone knows the contrary, jump in. It seems the organizations are saying that Tums are not okay for this Pesach. Sorry to say. There's one very specific flavor of Tums. I think it was peppermint, but the list that I saw, it had a specific like carrier. I mean, I don't know. It's one of these things that I'll just read to you what I have in the list. From that Los Angeles list that the Star K uses. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, don't know where my thing is. Give me 1 second. Oh, okay. Um, okay, there's some brand company, Haleon, Haleon. I don't know what that is. Maybe that means something to somebody here. And peppermint, Tums peppermint only. But that's the only thing I've seen. Everything else I've seen seems to be saying that it's not kitnios, but it's the actual potential chametz issue. Sorry to say, sorry to report. I'm curious, by the way, if people don't mind, does anybody have another product that they would recommend using for indigestion if Tums is not an option? Just because I haven't. Somebody wrote in asking, not for this, but for the WhatsApp. Somebody wrote in asking, so what alternative is there? But I don't even know what's good out there to even look for names. Do you understand what I mean? Does anyone want to suggest a product other than Tums that people might? I'm happy to look up now if it's an issue. Anyone have anything in mind?
Actually, I just looked up, and Haleon, apparently Tums is a Haleon brand, along with some others as
Oh,
well.
really? Oh, Menashe,
So,
you're great. So the star case says,
yeah, what does it say?
again, but you probably have to make sure that it's actually that. The star case says that peppermint Tums sold by Haleon is okay. But I just need to make a public service announcement for a second, and I could make this in many different contexts, but here we go. I want to tell you how many ways we in our group here have benefited from Menashe Cats tonight. Okay, we could say this every day of the week. First of all, many of you saw this Pesach packet that we sent out. I did type things. I did select what should go in it, but somebody cleaned it all up so it would look nice and presentable, and that was Menashe. Number one. Number two, I wanted that it should go on the chat. I'm first of all, I don't know how to do this stuff anyway, but could someone just put it on the chat, just so people could see it? And Menashe I think I asked you to do it, Menashe, and you just did it, just like that. Number two. Number three, I don't know what Haleon is, so Menashe looked it up and let us know. By the way, God willing, Menashe is going to post this recording for whoever wants to see it afterwards. These and many, many other ways are ways that we all benefit from Menashe day in, day out, week in, week out. And Menashe, thank you for everything you do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, I want to see. Oh, that's interesting. Wait, I got a little bit confused. Oh, that's very interesting. Did everyone see what Fran put in? And that's, I think, Ariel must be putting in something similar. And thank you, Google Pixel. Okay, that's great information. Thank you, everybody. Okay, very well. Last call. Any other questions? Okay, Chag Kosher B'Sameach to everyone, and I hope I didn't bring too much stress to people, but really, 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 it's a little bit of planning at the beginning, but Amrit Hashem. By the way, we'll all be able to have some rest before we go into the Seder. So it's a little complicated when Shabbos is Erev Pesach, but we can take a nap Shabbos afternoon. It's not a bad thing. Okay, be well, everybody. A good Yontif to all. Thank you for all the people who submitted questions, and thanks for sticking with us so long. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.